As a performance dietitian, I spend my day helping athletes and high performers get every advantage possible, and hydration is one of the biggest difference makers. But what most people don't realize is hydration isn't just about how much water you drink, but how your body actually absorbs and utilizes it. And Protekt Hydration is the only hydration supplement that I recommend. It's a liquid electrolyte supplement that absorbs more efficiently than any powder on the market. The precise formula of sodium, potassium, and magnesium matches exactly what you lose in sweat, with no sugar, no dyes, and no artificial ingredients. I've tested nearly every hydration product on the market, and nothing comes close to the performance and purity of Protekt. It's veteran-owned, made in the USA, and it's the only product I trust for myself and my clients. If you take your performance seriously, go to protekt.com/truth and experience the difference real hydration makes.
So Greg Navickas, you are an Air Force combat controller, and I have to read this off this because it's such a long title. You are the senior enlisted leader for human performance in Air Force Special Warfare training. If anyone's like me, they don't really know what that means. It sounds super cool, and I know a little bit more just from getting to know you, but I think it's an awesome thing that people need to know about. So just kind of explain what that title means and what you do.
Yeah. And in order to start, I'd like to say that what I express on this podcast are my own thoughts and don't represent the Air Force or the DOD. So get that out of the way. And so as the senior enlisted leader of the human performance support to Air Force Special Warfare Initial Training, I oversee 2 squadrons of medical and athletic professionals, and I'm one of the operators who are overseeing those medical and athletic professionals, and I act as a translator between them and supporting the operational community. So that's my main role, help guide them to effective support.
And what is this training center? What's the goal of the training center?
Yeah, so the training center is officially called the Special Warfare Training Wing, and it's housed in San Antonio, Texas, but they have areas spread out all over the U.S. The goal is to train initial Air Force Special Warfare competencies for the Air Force Special Warfare career fields to be able to say, hey, you're good enough to go to an operational unit and deploy and do good work.
Now, what does that training typically look like? Like that people would understand exactly what it takes to train someone out.
Yeah, it takes a general flow of when you get in the door, a lot of our people are non-prior service, so they come straight out of basic training, around 90-ish%. So they come in through basic training, and we have to do a workup to get them ready for an assessment selection, which is like a kick in the balls, right? So we do a preparatory course called SWIC, or it's Special Warfare Candidate Course. Now it's Special Warfare Assessment Selection. So they just kind of merged it, created a little less time in between the candidate course and assessment to give them less time to think, keep them on the car lot so they don't end up quitting and, put them through the hard stuff. But prep them physically, mentally, give them the human performance nutrition, sleep, whatnot, and get them ready for a true test, which is assessment selection. And during assessment selection, we try to tease out attributes, like things that we look for and we value as a special warfare community. So we do things that we put them through the ringer, that those events are geared to tease out those attributes. So at the end of it, we select them based off the assessment that we conducted, and then they could actually start their training from there. Typical training will consist of, depend on the pathway, but training on infill methods. So pre-dive, combat dive, airborne school, military free fall school, survival school, SEER, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. And then once they get done with that, they kind of branch off into their specialty pathways, depending on what career field that they're going towards. And you have PJ, pararescue. They're kind of like the Air Force, ground, combat medics, and technical rescue specialists. You have combat controllers, and they are air to ground integration experts, and they're also kind of air traffic controllers, so they can assess, survey, establish, and run tactical airfields and a lot of other things for resupply, infill, exfil. Then you have special reconnaissance. So they are airmen who will be required to conduct reconnaissance and send back human information to target things for Air Force Special Operations needs. And if you look at how we were set up for GWAT, we had persistent ISR, which means that we had constant access to the skies. We didn't have denied air, right? So we can put a drone or a manned aircraft in the air days before an operation, and they could watch and gain intelligence.
And what's GWAT?
The Global War on Terror.
Okay.
So really from 2001 until just recently, a couple of years ago, we've shifted from GWAT to great power competition. But with great power competition, we'll be looking at facing adversaries and places that have a more robust air defense system. So with that, it increases the threat to aircraft, manned and unmanned, and we may not be able to have that aircraft overhead providing information. So we'll have to rely on the people on the ground, and special reconnaissance can kind of fill that role. And then we have TACP. So TACP are also air-to-ground integration specialists. And the key difference between TACP and combat control is they primarily support conventional Army units as their fire support integration expert, liaison from the Air Force to the ground scheme maneuver. But they also do support some advanced infantry like the Rangers, and then sprinkle into special operations as well.
So the way you talk about it, it's kind of, part of it is you have to know and predict what future warfare could be. And it's kind of, we're kind of maybe getting out of the era of the Middle East and more of and again, if I say anything wrong, just correct me and change it because I'm a civilian. The guerrilla tactics and moving more towards people that could have far more advanced tactics. And I hate, as a civilian, I hate talking about war like that, because we talk about it like it's a football game. It's like, well, who's got the best team? And then like, who's going to win the quarter? It's human lives. So it always seems when we have those discussions, it seems a little cold. So I don't want it to sound that, but a lot of people just don't know that these things are going on. So when you talk about the future and how that looks and how those enemies might be more advanced, are you able to say like who that could be, or like what we're looking forward at the potentials of that? Yeah.
It's no secret. And it's kind of filtered down through the National Security Strategy, which is a document from White House level down through defense, military, and through the services. So the threat that we are postured towards, the biggest threat that has the ability to just change the world order, is China. So I think it's a smart move to posture our military forces, and not only our military forces, but other elements of national power towards that, to ensure that our interests are looked after. If we do that, it should allow us to be able to handle challenges and threats that aren't at that level as well. So a challenge that is a pretty high level, but not quite on par with China, would be Russia, right? And then you have Iran always kicking off. You have North Korea. And then you'll still have the violent extremist organizations, terrorist organizations and whatnot. They're not going to go away just because we said GWAT's over. Like, they're probably going to become emboldened. So we have to stay postured to be able to adapt and flex to any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's such a... it's a wild thing to think about that, because I remember, I guess the global war on terror started when I was in, I guess, 8th grade, and to think about, I'm 36 now. So like that consumed majority of my life. Like that was consumed a large portion of my life, like seeing that and being accustomed to that. And, people my age and even older than that, like I guess all the way Desert Storm older, we've always been at war with one type of people. It's always been like one area. And so I think the thought and the concept of the future is going to look like a completely different enemy honestly, it's a bit terrifying. You got to have confidence in the fact that we are America, like we're a strong country. We, as you're discussing, like we know these things. It's not like we're just sitting back waiting for it to happen and then retaliate. Like we already have to be doing what it takes to, be preemptive on that. And I know being a father of 2 sons, it's scary because, I don't want to see my kids have to do that. If they choose to, great. If they volunteer, I'd be very proud of them. But you never want to see a situation where like it's absolutely necessary. So it's
absolutely.
Scary.
I think nobody wants a war at the level of U.S. versus China or U.S. versus Russia, because it's all nuclear powers, right? So a lot of people are going to do what they can to avoid that. How that might end up playing out is kind of like Cold War-esque type environments where there's some conflicts that are heating up, and a lot of it will be kind of maybe proxy forces, like going against other people through some proxies, right? To ensure that our interests are being held up. And a big part of it is building and maintaining relationships, allies, partners, imposing costs on them, trying to figure out what they're doing, try to match and overcome. And it's that, it is that battle, just like in a football game. Like you always want to get that advantage. You're seeing what they're doing, you're going to react and adjust to it. It's consistently going to be like that. And so going back to the global war on terror, we were fighting against, overall, I'm not going to try to discredit anyone who served there in GWAT, but if you look at the level of competition that we faced in the global war on terror versus the potential competition that we could be facing with a near peer adversary that has the resources, the backing, the GDP to push towards the defense,
GDP? What's that?
Gross domestic product. So like a lot of money that they can put towards defense. It's not even, right? So the fight that we fought, I would say we had almost every advantage over our adversary, which is awesome, right? That's what we want. We had superior training, we had resources, we had superior technology, we had basing nearby, so we can leave our base, fly right to the target, right to the X, conduct the mission, collect intel, bring it back to the base, leaving off a helo, hand off that intel so they can continue feeding the targeting cycle. And then I can go to the chow hall, grab a coffee, and get in a fight gym, or go get my lift on, get ready for the next operation. In a future fight, we may not even have bases. We may not have chow halls. We may not even have satellites. So it can really complicate things. So we have to prepare our military to become more resilient and be able to perform better, because the level of competition has risen. The potential competition has risen. So we have to increase our performance. And I think that's the main goal that we're focusing on with human performance integration into special warfare training. So I think that there is potential to give them the advantage on the battlefield in their headspace to outthink, outmaneuver, and outperform the enemy, when a lot of their other advantages are negated. So that's what we're kind of working towards.
If you care about performance, what you fuel your body with matters. Essential Provisions was created for people who demand more endurance, more energy, and more from life. Their Sustain Energy Blend is built from real nutrient-dense ingredients. Things like coconut MCTs, chia seeds, and grass-fed collagen. You get long-lasting energy, sustained focus, and all with just 1 gram of natural sugar. Whether you're training, competing, hiking, hunting, or just grinding through the day, this is fuel that can actually keep up. So go to the Essential Provisions link in the show notes and save 10%. Because above average fuel leads to above average performance. Half-Face Blades makes 100% American-made knives for the world's best military operators, hunters, and chefs. People who need knives to make a living or stay alive. That's why I trust them with my own everyday carry knife. So if things like buying American and high performance matter to you, head over to halffaceblades.com and throw away your cheap gas station knives.
It's really interesting because technology is technology. That's the people that need to handle that are going to be handling that. The people that are handling diplomacy are going to handle diplomacy.
Yeah.
And that's, you can't really touch that. But you can impact, again, human performance. It's something that can be changed. And I'll say I did a lot of entertainment tours at various bases in different countries and war countries, and from Afghanistan to Africa. And it was always interesting to me when I would talk to soldiers, because they would always do a Q&A. There would be like short seminars, and I was always curious to kind of learn what fitness looked like within the military, and what hand-to-hand combat and such looks like in the military. And I was a little shocked to see that it doesn't really exist unless you personally choose to make it exist. And, that was something that really surprised me, to the point that I started working with, I have several clients in the special operations community, because those guys tend to be the ones who seek that out more. But you guys are kind of, I don't say requiring it, but you're jumping ahead and saying, hey, we are going to get ahead of the game. We're going to train these people somewhat like athletes. In the brief conversation we had before this, it does very much seem like the same concepts as training athletes to perform at the highest level of their sport.
Yeah. And if I can kind of walk you back through the history of human performance to kind of help you understand how we got to where we're at, and it'll help you understand like the shift that we're taking to where we need to be. So in the global war on terror, GWAT, we were having high operational tempo. People were deploying a lot, so they're gone from their family. And they were seeing a lot of combat. So that exposure through some things that people aren't normally used to seeing was leading to some mental health issues, right? Increased suicide rates, substance abuse, and whatnot. So SOCOM was one of the leading efforts, Special Operations Command. And they're like, we need to do something to address this, to ensure that we are looking after the operator and having something in place to make sure that they're healthy for the long term and they can continue supporting the mission, whether it's overseas or back home, right? So they created a program called POTIF, Preservation of the Force and Family. And it was mainly geared to be a pressure relief program to drive down the mental health issues with the high ops tempo and the combat exposure. So they assigned medical and athletic professionals to just help on the fringes with ensuring that they're ready to go. First, it's relieve the pressure, right? And they did a great job. Part of that relieving the pressure is get them used to seeing these people in their units, in their spaces, because before that, you did not want to go see somebody, because if you did, it'll be in your record. And the thought was that if it's in your record, it'll get reported and you'll be taken off the mission. So now when we have people embedded into the units, we establish trust with them. And now that we trust them, we know that we can say things around them and they can be honest with us, and we can just have a shared understanding of what the actual reality is. And we've learned that it's better to seek help early, left of bang, if you will, before things become an issue. And the medical and athletic professionals have been successful in making that happen. And we've taken that model and instituted it down at the training level. So the trainees going through, it's something that they're used to seeing. So they see them embedded into the operations. So they're going to go forward and hopefully continue to address issues left to bang. But because we maintained the advantage over our adversaries, we didn't necessarily need to seek the advantage through performance aspects. It was more of, hey, let's bring ourselves down so we're not hurting ourselves long run, not bring ourselves up so we can outperform, because we already did, right? We, through having athletic professionals, strength and conditioning coaches, nutritionists, psychs, all that support, we did increase our generalized performance to a certain level, but not to the level where we think it's adequate to face the threats that might be coming. So that's kind of like where we're at right now. And now with great power competition and hopefully not, but great power conflict looming, we need to make a transition to focus more on that performance aspect to ensure that now our people are ready to operate on a battlefield. Because if you look at Ukraine and Russia, they have capabilities that negate each other's advantages. Like, it's not safe to fly over there, right? Because either side can shoot down other side's aircraft. So it kind of leads into a ground war. And it's a ground war of attrition mixed in with some crazy technology, like all the drones and whatnot. Yeah. So when it comes down to fighting man versus man or team versus team, we just need to make sure that we have the better humans or the better teams so that we can win when needed.
Is every branch doing this? Because I know this is the Air Force, and before you and some of my other Air Force special warfare friends, I didn't know this existed, but I've never heard about this within the other branches. Or do their special operations communities just kind of already have it?
No. So we're at in human performance, we're at that inflection point. So I think everyone's kind of figuring out by reading the environment, like what the right direction is. So I've seen it in multiple programs across the Air Force that they're trying to move in this direction. The Army, the Navy, not so sure about the Marines, but the Marines are usually pretty forward thinking on this stuff too. So I'm pretty confident that they're right up that line of thinking as well.
It's interesting what you meant too about how these guys didn't want to seek out the professionals within their own groups because of fear they would be sidelined.
Yeah.
We had Dr. Kirk Parsley, who's a Navy SEAL, and then he became a doctor and then was a Dr. SEAL within the Navy SEAL unit. And he talked about that. Well, that was one of the issues within the SEALs. They would go see their own private doctors because they didn't want to see the ones within the Navy, because he said, an operator is like a professional athlete. The worst thing you can do to them is put them on the sidelines. They want to be out there, and they were constantly afraid of that. And they dealt a lot with, he said it got dubbed operator syndrome, which is in the civilian word metabolic syndrome, which is just a culmination of issues, diabetes, heart disease, all kinds of issues that these guys were facing. And a lot of them were kind of facing it privately because they refused to risk being sidelined as a result.
Yeah, and some of the symptoms of operator syndrome, and a lot of it is almost tied back to repetitive blast exposure, but it is cognitive, like fatigue, not being able to have the tools to maintain a healthy relationship. It leads to overall frustration, and then not having that pressure relief valve. If everything else in your life is sort of falling apart, then that leads you down the path of like, how am I going to address it? Maybe numb myself. And then if I'm continuing to numb myself through substance abuse, like, you get down into a dark hole and you may not find a way out. And that's where it leads to suicide, which a lot of what we're trying to do is like still prevent that, because it's still happening.
What are the statistics on that? I've seen different numbers. It was like,
Don't quote me on any statistics.
No, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
It's far higher than anyone imagines. I know that it's.
Yeah. Even one is really an unfortunate event. So if we can do anything to change that from happening, and we have the ability to do it, and we are doing it. So we just need to continue spreading the word on it.
No, it's a crazy thing. And we talked a little bit about like the training warfighters as athletes and the parallels there.
Yeah.
So what would you say in your eyes, and I have my own opinions from working with athletes and some special, some of the special operators that I remotely work with, what do you see as the parallels between the two communities?
There are a lot of similarities, but then there's certain things which create a divide the further along we go, using the term like tactical athlete. And the similarities are like athletic professionals and special operators and military people. We have the same mentality, right? A lot of we can talk to each other and we're of a like mind, right? We can instantly click because we just like to get after it. And I think
a little messed up in the head.
A little messed up in the head, but there's a shared like kind of person who is attracted to both of those things. Driven, the community, the teamwork, camaraderie, like all that is present in both. Sidetrack here. We did a post-deployment reset week where our unit was able to take us to Duke University and kind of lead us through a lot of human performance modalities as like a check to ensure that we're good to go after deployment. But part of that was to go on the baseball field with the Duke baseball team and have a little home run derby. So I'm sitting in the outfield with the Duke baseball players and we're talking. They're younger, but they're like, I'm about to have to grow up and get a real job. It kind of sucks, man. I've had a great time playing baseball. And at that moment, I realized, I was like, man, I'm looking around at my team. I was like, I've never had to grow up. Like, I'm able to do what you're doing continuously and do what I enjoy doing. So back off the sidetrack here. So I'll break down levels of human performance, if you will, and then I'll kind of tie it all back together. So I think that there's 4 levels of HP. The first level is like a hierarchy. You have health and wellness. And that is just ensuring you're healthy, you're good to go, you're making good choices, you're improving your environment. You could take this to level 10, level 100, level 1000, right? But I think for the general like American public, just a little bit of change could probably do a lot of good and improvement. But if you're healthy and you're well, you can continue moving on to performance. But the next level is injury prevention and rehab. So if you're injured or if you're rehabbing, it's hard to move on to the performance aspect. So you have to nurse that, get better. And then once it's good to go, you can move on. And we have teams that help with that. Physical therapists, athletic trainers, they work with the strength and conditioning coaches. Even if it's a mental injury, like we got the teams that can work that too, all right? The next level is generalized performance. So that is where a majority of human performance in the military is currently at with special operations. It is having the professionals like strength and conditioning to help you work out better, become stronger, faster, whatnot, right? Move better. You have nutrition, right? And you know that. How do you eat better? How do you make sure you're hydrated? What's your sweat loss ratio? So you can do all the calculations. You have the psych team. So how are you improving your sleep? What's the cognitive effects of that? How are you self-aware? What's your personality? How do you interact with other people? What's your mindset like going into something? And you have cognitive performance, which is receiving stimulus, processing it and reacting. And then you also have like attention and everything like that too. And that's where we cap out at. And that's where the term tactical athlete, I think, kind of ends, because there's a divide right now, which I like to call the understanding gap. And that understanding gap keeps us from realizing level 4, which is operational performance. And you could think that task-specific performance. The reason why we're gapped right there is because the medical and athletic professionals, they don't necessarily understand the unique challenges of the operational community, right? So if they try to apply what's best practices in their community, that gap exists because those best practices might work against what special operations are trying to accomplish. So if you want to train smarter, which on one hand, you have athletic and medical professionals, they tend to lean towards that, but you may not be able to get as hard and develop the grit that's required for special operations. So there's a little bit of a draw in both ways. So we're working to close that gap, right? And we close that gap through integration, like getting them working together, sharing the same space, and then they can understand each other's capabilities and problems and come up with unique solutions to tackle the operational challenges using the specialties that are inherent within what they bring to the table. So, like, not only how do you move better, but let me take a look at your entrance into a close quarter combat shoot house. Let me see your footwork. If you're doing fire maneuver drills with your kit on, let me break down your body mechanics to see how you can get up as fast and check your sprint to ensure that you're moving as fast as you can to reduce your signature and maybe not getting shot. If you're doing nutrition, like how am I able to take the nutrition principles that I've learned and apply it to mission planning? And then also sleep, like when I have to go down if I'm on a multi-day operation, if I'm going down to like 30 or 50% security, what's the impact of that going to be, the cognitive load on the rest of my team? So it's just something that can work in the background that I think we could just calculate and take into consideration with our future, with whatever we have going on. We like to call it MET-TC. It's something that drives decisions on the battlefield, mission, enemy, troops, terrain, civilian considerations, and weather.
Man, it's interesting because, I mean, I've worked with, and through the podcast, I've interviewed, different coaches at the NCAA level, NFL, MLB, like all like highest levels. And there's some things you guys are doing that I don't even feel like they're doing, which is really cool. Like the things that you guys are aware of and trying to get on top of that they're not necessarily. And that's honestly, I didn't know that. So it's really cool because I've always felt like, from my understanding of the two, things that are lacking and where they could benefit. Because training an athlete is an asset.
Yeah.
It's an expensive asset. Like it's a very expensive thing. And that's why you see, and we all get frustrated. I don't know if you're a football fan, but it's frustrating as a football fan to see sometimes they're overprotecting the quarterback. And, they've even started to change some of the rules and stuff because like, hey, we realize you want to see really hard hits, but this is a very expensive athlete. So we also kind of have to protect them. So that has in turn looked, they're starting to worry more about things like recovery and longevity and things like that, but it's not things they always did. And you guys obviously have to do the same because, I mean, a soldier is an asset because it's not just money to you guys. It's not a contract agreement. It's literally life or death. And there's nothing more expensive and more worth more than a human life. And I know when I would speak with soldiers overseas, and some of their top questions would be how important things, like how important do you think nutrition should be, or what should that look like, or how important should strength conditioning be? I remember clearly there was one guy, and that was his concern. He was like, hey, how important do you think it is for us to diet and exercise beyond that? Because to be honest, he said, sometimes I'm stressed. I'm exhausted from the other things. And he goes, and I feel like I know the answer. I should, but I just want to hear your opinion of it. And I was like, man, like the way I look at it again as a civilian, like you're not playing to win, like you're playing to survive. And I know for me as a husband and father, I can't imagine a more competitive scenario than I win, I get to go home and see my wife and kids. Like, to me, that's powerful. And if I can work out a little bit more to increase my chances, because it does, like, strength conditioning makes you more resilient. There was an old coach, he's Mark Ripito, who one of his quotes, he has a lot of famous quotes, but one of his quotes was, strong people are harder to kill and generally more useful.
Yeah.
And I love that, because it is true. You're just a more useful person the stronger you are. And that goes with mental health too. The more mentally strong you can be, the more useful you can be, the more resilient you can be, the more you're protecting yourself with nutrition and doing those things, the more valuable of an athlete you are, or as a soldier you are. And I just wish more of those guys kind of understood that. And I always tried to get that through to them is, hey, you need to look at yourself as a high asset athlete, because you are, like, far beyond that even. And some get it, they do, but some don't. And that's fine. You can't, make everyone understand it. But the fact that you guys have kind of formed an entire program to kind of make it happen is just super cool to me.
Yeah, and it's hard to implement it correctly, because we're trying to shift that understanding of the possibility versus people's understanding of how it was back in the past. So you're kind of battling. It's an integration, an interesting case study of, like, trying to fit it in with the culture, right? So you take it from an approach of meet them where they're at, right? So it may not be as direct or as quick as you want it to be, but it might be the only approach that is going to be effective. We were fortunate enough, last night we went to go visit the Rock training complex, the San Antonio Spurs.
Nice.
And we were talking to their athletic director, and he was telling us, he was like, man, like, we make these changes, we do these things on the fringes, on the margins, because maybe we just missed the playoff by 3 games, And what if we adjusted? What if nutrition was a thing that could have made that difference, right? At that level, they're already performing. They're maxing out performance with the individual, their talent. So they're able to focus on those fringe things. But at our level, especially in the beginning, we're really trying to set foundations and exposure. And it's hard to move on to level 4, task-specific performance, if you don't have levels 1, 2, and 3 done. So you almost got to take this concept and meet them where they're at. And then hopefully what we're trying to do is apply this concept in a progressive manner throughout all of Air Force Special Warfare. So not only at the initial training, but at their operational units, and following them along until the end of their career, so they can be a more lethal operator for longer. And then when they hang up the hat and hang up the uniform, they're not broken.
Yeah. And is this something that you see, I guess, more investment in as time goes on? It's going to kind of, right now it is kind of a fringe thing, but is it something that you see in the next 5-10 years just being the norm for all soldiers?
Yeah, there's a lot of focus on it right now. And the hard part of it is, with the military, they need to budget for things, right? So when you're fighting for budget and resources, you have to be able to show return on investment. So it can be difficult to show return on investment for some of the human performance aspects, because we are applying preventative measures. So how do you may not be able to realize that return until 10 to 15 years down the line, when you look at their medical records compared to what they could have been like 20 years earlier. So there's other ways that we can go about proving return on investment more at the tactical level. Like, hey, talking to the operators, does this make you better at performing your job? Does this give you more confidence? Does this help relieve your stress a little bit to give you the brain space to focus on what you need to do? That's a return on investment, right? Because they'll buy in on it. And then if the cadre, the instructors buy in on it, they'll take that approach and apply it to the students. So it's indirectly using our approach to the students, which is probably the most effective method, because the students look up to the cadre as like, that's what I want to be like. So instead of having a human performance professional on the sidelines telling them that, it'll just be so much stronger coming from the cadre itself. And then you have the next layer is like, what do commanders value? They're looking at their force as a whole from a different level. It's like, what is the readiness of my force? Do I have teams that are capable to deploy right now? And if they are, like, which team should I send? So being able to give them a little more data on the readiness profile of their unit as a whole, I think can lead to better decision makings for who to send, where to send, and when. And then at the higher level for budgeting, we need to show how it saves money over long run, or the money that we commit to it. Like, we need to show actual data for this is worth it because here's your return. X amount of dollars in equals this much savings out, or not savings, but here's the performance outcomes that we're getting. And I think that's where sports and military differs just a little bit, because they're very performance driven on the sports side, right? So if it gives them the advantage and increases their shooting percentage or whatnot, they can see like, is this worth the investment? Yes or no? For us, it's a little bit difficult to quantify, but I think that a lot of people are focusing on it right now. So we're going to be able to find out what right looks like pretty shortly.
Yeah. To do that, is there a like regular, y'all take regular blood work? Are there things you guys are doing to like track those metrics to be able to say like this improved?
Yeah, so there are efforts to standardize baselines. So that way we can see what someone looks like coming in the door versus right before leaving for deployment, coming back from deployment, and then heading out at the end of their military career. But that all takes time, right? But something that we can do right now is like, we can take me to the range. Let's go to the pistol range and do some shooting drills. Knock out a couple drills and determine what's the accuracy percentage. How quick are you with transitioning from target to target, doing your speed reloads, whatnot. And if we could just conduct a little bit of intervention methods, maybe some vision training to get your focus quicker on shifting from near focus, your sights, to far focus, your target, acquiring a new target, which is an adjacent steel plate or whatnot, and then shifting your line of sight and engaging while you're doing trigger squeeze. And then you have mental preparation kind of throughout all that stuff, because you're on the buzzer and the whole team's looking at you. So it's a little bit stressful and you don't want to mess up. If you can improve performance through that, that is something that's tangible that the people on the ground care about.
How much do they look at things like supplementation, hormone replacement therapy? Is that something that you guys address and look at?
So the military is going to be very risk averse when it comes to that. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity that we're not taking advantage of in terms of some safe supplements that can help make our people healthy, give them, just help them recover better.
Yeah.
You know, give them the appropriate like muscle growth, whatnot. But we're working through some supplement updates, but it's hard because we have to balance it versus the risk, because we take it seriously, or the military takes it seriously. Once a family gives their children over to the military, like the commanders have that responsibility to ensure that they're taken care of. But we're working towards expanding what the supplement offering is.
Yeah, because in my head, I'm thinking, like the benefits of things like creatine.
Yeah.
Like we know creatine's the most studied supplement in sports history.
Yeah.
And the benefits, not just for performance, but brain health.
Yep.
You know, it's one of, I personally think everyone should take creatine, period.
Creatine, vitamin D, like things like
yes.
that. Like, especially if you get your labs drawn.
Yes. Yes. Like, and that would be the thing. Creatine is I tell people, like, if there's a hierarchy, I think everyone should take creatine. I think the 70-year-olds, I think the populations that people don't think should take it are often the ones that should take it most, because it's being used to improve markers of dementia and Alzheimer's and all these things, because it's brain health. Like creatine is a very powerful brain health supplement. But it doesn't get sold as that, because that's not as sexy as sports performance, you know. But it's so beneficial for that. And I think with my combat sport athletes, it's so important, not just to make them a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, but for the pure fact it can armor against traumatic brain injury, which is also a high risk situation for warfighters.
Yeah, and it's not even just the in your face brain injury. It's the repetitive blast exposure. Like if you're in an explosive breacher, or if you're by artillery rounds going off all night, or even if you have a nice compensator on your 5.56, like you're standing next to someone and it's shooting out the side, like that blast exposure repetitively can do some damage. And I've seen people during deployments when we're just launching mortars all night long, after about 2 weeks to a month of going out and doing that, it's hard for them to formulate sentences. And they're like, all right, something's going on here. So take them off the line a little bit.
Yeah, and brain health is just, when it comes to like TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, it happens so much more than anyone knows. And I do feel like we know more about it now than we used to, but it's still happening at a level. So as a professional athlete, or as a professional fighter in particular, I can name 2 traumatic brain injuries that I received because those were diagnosed.
Yep.
But there's no one there diagnosing all that happened during practice. Like how many times I drove home from the gym and I don't really remember leaving the gym, but I'm home. And that happens. And that's not just like a scary story for me. You go to any given mixed martial arts gym and talk to their pro team, it's going to be half the group are going to have stories like that. You know, you'll be diagnosed for the ones that maybe after the fight, you forget things, or you don't know what's going on. You get admitted to the hospital and the doctor says this, but leading up to that fight, you had 6, 8, 12 weeks of fighting 5 days a week to get there.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with war fighters. It's happening far more than people realize. And I think it's causing far more issues than people realize. You see, with things like Chris Benoit, the WCW wrestler who killed his family and had some head issues. Aaron Hernandez, the NFL player who started having all the CT issues and did what he did. And I think that it inspired to look at those things more, and they're starting to see that there's a lot more athletes.
Something going on there.
Yes, and that's leading to there's so many athletes that deal with depression post-career. And they're dealing with it during, but while you're in, you have to focus. You're focused on something, and I would imagine this. I'm trying to make this parallel between the two. Yeah. It's something you're inspired and you're motivated by the job, and as soon as you don't have that job anymore, the distraction's gone. You're dealing with the same screwed up things going on in here, but now you're just left with your wife and your kids and the jerk that's blowing his horn at you at the red light. And I don't think people understand how hard that is to adapt to being a civilian again for people if you've had these traumatic brain injuries.
Yeah. And it impacts your sleep too, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're up, maybe not able to sleep, maybe because of the TBIs repetitively, you have sleep apnea, right? So you're not able to fully recover. And then you're already starting next day out not at your peak performance. So it's a vicious cycle that requires what I'm seeing right now is kind of an approach that is a holistic approach, targeting sleep, stress, anxiety, nutrition, everything to get you back towards an ideal state. Yeah. And fortunately, there's more focus on it right now. So the people who are leaving the military or near leaving, they're set up better than people in the past have been, which is good. And then I'm assuming it'll continually move over left. So that way we can take the preventative measures and be where we need to be.
And I'm glad you mentioned sleep, and you hit the nail right on the head. It literally, sleep is when like I said, we had Dr. Kirk Parsley, and he is, one of the world's leading sleep experts. And the fact that he is a Navy SEAL shows that, like he saw it in himself and his own units. Like, sleep is when you recover from the day before, and then you prepare for the next day. And that's all happening while you're asleep. And if you're not sleeping, you're getting less recovery, you're getting less preparation. And then you repeat that every single day.
Yeah, and then you have less impulse control, so you make the poor nutrition choices, so that way when your body's actually replenishing and recovering, it's not having the proper nutrients to do it right, and it's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah, and what he and I discussed was sleep is, it's designed for those purposes, and when you don't get enough, your body doesn't, you hear people all the time, I don't need that much sleep, I operate, just fine on 4 to 5 hours. It's like, no, you exist because the body is so intelligent at keeping us alive. Yeah. But alive is all it cares about. The body doesn't care about performance. It doesn't care about winning. It doesn't care about how you look. It cares about survival. So what happens when you're not getting enough sleep is the body starts taking away from your performance abilities. Yeah. And it starts putting those into survival abilities. So it's not, you're not thriving, you're surviving because you're putting yourself in this position. And our body, the only time, evolutionarily speaking, like at the beginning of man, the only time we wouldn't get enough sleep is it's disaster. We're not getting enough sleep because we're running from danger, or we're not getting enough sleep because we have to be more advantageous of awake times to go find food. Yeah. So the body recognizes poor sleep as, hey, we're in a survival situation here. Like, I'm going to increase hunger hormones because we're hungry. We have to be hungry. That's the only reason we would not be taking advantage of the extra hours. So we're going to make us really hungry so we can go find that food. Or we're in severe danger, so we're going to pump cortisol because we are in that fight or flight. Like, we know something's happening. That's what happens. These people who aren't sleeping enough are living in a constant state of fight or flight and hunger. And I believe, if you would have asked me 15 years ago or more, when I really started being in nutrition, like where I would put the hierarchy of health, like I would have put nutrition at the base. I would have probably said nutrition, strength conditioning, sleep, mental health, things like that. But it's hard not to put sleep at the base. Like anymore now, anytime I try to think about it, it's either nutrition and sleep or sleep and nutrition, because sleep is the foundation that everything else will change upon.
Yep. And look at it as almost a triangle, right? You have sleep at the base, you have nutrition as one end, and then you have fitness, whatever that is, like movement, right? And I think movement will break you down. The nutrition will be there to replenish you, but you recover during the sleep. So if you can nail those things right and you're eating healthy, you're working out properly, hopefully that can help eliminate some of the cognitive or mental issues that are surrounded with disease, because we're not eating things that are healthy for us. And then issues with not getting enough sleep, or movement issues because you're not spending the time on proper fitness and unable to move and getting injured.
Yeah. And beyond supplementation, I briefly mentioned like hormone replacement therapy. And I know that, that's a thing. It's legal, but to be able to control it is obviously a difficult thing. But I think it is important. I hope it's something that gets looked at more and more from the standpoint. People would be shocked to realize when we're looking at these high-level athletes, how many of the top-performing athletes in different sports have low testosterone. You don't think that because you see this human being out there just doing extraordinary things. You assume that their testosterone is just raging, and they're often far lower than just the average man out there with a normal 9 to 5. And that is a result of the stresses of an athlete. It's a result of poor sleep. It's a result of head injuries. Head injuries are one of the top reasons that we do see a drop in testosterone. And as you improve testosterone, you start to see those things improve. It's protective of brain injuries. It's protective of cardiovascular disease and all of these things. But it is such a slippery slope. Because there's not necessarily a standard of what is a healthy testosterone level, which is one issue. It's a range, anywhere from 400 to 1,000. Someone could say that. Another doctor might say it's anywhere from 300 to 900, but there's no set standard of this is where we have to be. And that's why sports ultimately can't legalize hormone replacement therapy, because let's say that we set that limit at 1,200 is the max. You can only be 1,200. Let's say you're at 400. Well, you want to get put on TRT. We get you on TRT. Now you're floating between seven. We'll say if 1,000 is the legal limit, we'll say you're floating between 700 and 900. Cool. You're in that legal limit, and you don't abuse your therapy. You keep doing the same thing you've been doing. But let's say all of a sudden you start getting more sleep. Like maybe you're happier. Maybe you're having more sex. Maybe you're in the sun more. You're doing all these things, and now all of a sudden you go take a test doing the same legal dosage you were. Now all of a sudden you're 1,100, and you didn't take more, but by those same standards, now you're cheating. And that is why, like, I get it from an athletic standpoint of why they can't legalize it, because you can't really modulate it and control it.
I mean, that'd be a good problem to have. But right now, like a lot of our people are hovering down at that low end, which I think is a low end for the general population. And if you look at the general population, and we're already on the low end of that, special operations, community, and athletes shouldn't be hovering on that low end.
No.
If you're looking at trying to optimize performance, there's some things that hopefully they can do to get that up. And it's probably not, it might not just be like taking the testosterone boosters. Like it's always more than that. It's like, what is the root cause? Why is your testosterone low? If you could figure that out, then that's what you really should be targeting versus like just giving them more T, because their T's low because of a reason.
Yeah.
So that, I think, kind of finding the reason behind why things are happening and targeting that is the approach that we should shift to just as a medical community in the U.S. that we don't utilize right now.
Yeah, and keeping metrics, it's something you should, you can be able to see. And like with, say, like my NFL athletes, they can't take anything.
Yeah.
So if one gets diagnosed with low testosterone, we see they have low testosterone, we can see how the normal implementations of just lifestyle changes, and you can see that over time, how it increases. Like just maybe getting an hour extra sleep, maybe some supplementation with vitamin D, maybe including, improving dietary regulations and such. And we'll actually start to see that. They might still be on the low end of where they want, but you will see improvements in their testosterone levels just by changing those lifestyle factors in general.
Yeah.
So that is the fact that you guys are addressing that already, I have a feeling is going to show. If they were to do regular hormone testing, they would see that that's improving just based off of that.
Yeah. How much time we at?
You tell me.
We're an hour in right now.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to specifically?
If there was anything that you wanted to promote.
That's what I was actually getting ready to stop and ask you that. That's what I was getting ready.
Yeah, so I don't have anything ready to promote yet, so it'd be a little premature.
No, well, realistically, I would say that this podcast is going to launch till fall, so if you have a date in mind, we can delay the release of this episode to go in line with what you're looking to promote.
Okay, that'd be cool.
Do you have a timeline as to where that is?
I think fall is something that I can work with.
Which means we can even maybe make this a winter thing. What is it? If you give me a brief overview.
Yeah, so it's like you familiar with Angie's List? It's an online service.
Oh
directory.
yeah. I was thinking it's not the
but
same.
for special operations services. So being able to find and connect with services to give SOF the advantage on the battlefield, or to help prior SOF promote their businesses to like public sector.
So it's essentially okay. So I'm trying to think how it would help you get into that. So it's, I guess it's what. So it would something they would do on their own, like they would find on their own.
Yeah. So
not the government, it's not being supplied for them. They would have to pay that on their own.
Yeah. So as a team guy, we would do a lot of training that would not be through the government. We'd pay for it with like a swipe of a government travel card, right?
Okay.
And so we would find that on our own. So just having a list of all those options and just facilitating the connection, so that way they know what's out there. For us, we're able to, as the Air Force, we integrate with a lot of different special operations teams. So we're able to see what everyone else does. Okay. So we have that insider knowledge on what's available, but a lot of those teams only stick with what they know, right? Okay. So giving them more options so that they can be best prepared in terms of training for any fight to come. But then also the second side is like Prior Soft, who offer a special operations flavored service like consulting, security, speaking, experience, whatnot, promoting that to the community.
Okay. What I'm going to do is ask you, like, say, like you are if you call it a team member, if you're a part of a special operations and you're trying to find what you need, you know, you're trying to find, if you're trying to find help out there to improve those things and you want to get better, like, is there anything out there for these people to find? And that's essentially, was there anything else you want to cover in the last little bit?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's been, just fold in whatever I want. Okay. Yeah. So if you are part of the special operations community and it's something, you know, we've talked about a lot of ways that you can improve your performance and what you guys are doing to improve performance. But if you want to do it on your own, because a lot of those people, again, with athletes, high-level athletes and special operators, you're always wanting more. You know, like, what can I do to be even better and be even better? What are those guys choosing? Or is there anything out there that they know where to look to find maybe access to these things to help them become even better?
Yeah, so when I was a team leader and I was putting together training plans for my team to meet whatever the requirements were for our next deployment or training cycle, we would just go off of what we used in the past or what we were passed down through secondhand knowledge, right? There's no repository of information of what's really available. So I decided to create a website that's like an online service directory. It's called Echotyr, ECHOTYR, and it offers a listing of training opportunities for special operations or high-end law enforcement, filtered down by categories so they can easily find it. It also offers a second part to it to continue helping the community after people retire. There are services that our SOF members, they offer to the public sector, and they have a special operations flavor to it, like consulting, security, experiences, whatnot. It'll list that too, so I can continue to promote and help out the community even after they get out.
Okay, and is that something that, as that develops further and goes on, that, say, like dietitians or remote strength, these kind of people can find ways to become consultants of, or is it just already people within the community that they can reach out to?
Yeah, so I'm trying to keep it limited to focusing on either offering special operations training or special operations flavored services for the public sector. Okay. So if they can fit in within that, then have at it.
That's a good idea. And you're seeing more and more different businesses start to do that because, again, like to be better and to be the best, you have to go a little bit beyond what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, there's a high demand for special operations services. One, on teams so we can gain the advantage because the future environment's going to be harder. But then two, in the public sector, people just like to hear what they have to offer. And there's some unique leadership that we bring to the table. And I'd like to promote Air Force Special Warfare leadership because we have a lot to offer as well. Yeah.
Man, I appreciate it. It's a conversation that coming into it, I didn't really even know where all it would go because it's such an unknown thing. Like it really is. I have very small bit of knowledge just from special operations communities I've worked with and soldiers I've worked with. And when I heard what you did and about the training center, I just thought it was such a fascinating thing that a lot of people, again, they didn't realize it existed. But it's cool to know that I guess the military is doing so much already just in case it's needed, but they're taking a lot more care than I think people realize to prepare future warfighters and special operators to be the absolute best version of themselves they could possibly be. So, man, I appreciate it. I learned a lot. I'm sure anyone else did. And I'm excited to see your new project come out. And I hope it's one that you're so busy with that you have to expand even further.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I think I'm optimistic about the future of human performance because we have people who care. And thank you because you expressed that you supported the troops, went down range. Not a lot of people do that, so it's evident that you care too. So I appreciate that, and I know they do too.
Appreciate it.
I want to thank you guys for watching, and also a word of thanks to our sponsors who have made this episode possible. All I ask is that you guys please hit the like and subscribe button, as it helps the podcast grow, and so we can continue to bring on some great guests for you guys. I'll see you in the next one.